Welcome to this hopefully short tutorial about using Blender to using it with your models with Substance Painter and then back into Blender again. And the reason why I've done this, like an awful lot of tutorials, there's always something that people miss when they're doing these tutorials. There's an assumption that you kind of know about the bit that they didn't talk about, and the frustration being is that you end up then getting frustrated because this missing thing is causing problems, right? So what I've done is I've created a set of instructions which I will put a link to on my YouTube. Basically, it's Blender to Substance Painter to back to Blender again for your textures. So very quickly, I'm going to focus on the things that generally tend to get left out of 20 videos that you'll watch, right? And then the one person that actually does say the bit that you need very often is going so fast that again you tend to miss it. So anyway, you create your model. You've got your model here. If you've got multiple parts to your model, whatever it is, the key thing is that you get your UV editing how you want it to be, right? That's actually quite key. And you need to get to a point where your model is exactly how it wants to be, and then your UVs are, in a good place. That's a given, really. The next thing is for each part of your model, if you've only got one, then it doesn't necessarily always matter. But if you've got multiple parts to your model, each model needs to have a material slot assigned to it. Now, by default, it's just called material. The good habit is that you would actually call this. So if you've got a cube shape and a sphere shape and a triangular shape, that you would actually call all of your materials something that so I could call this cube material, for instance, right? I've given it a name, and that becomes quite obvious once you start bringing this model into Substance Painter. Okay, I would always save my model. That's basically all you need to do. We're now going to export this model out. There's two file formats that are generally used by Substance Painter, and that's Wavefront OBJ and FBX. I tend to always use FBX. It just works, okay? I've already done this previously, so I'm going to just highlight selected object because I only want the selected objects exported out, and I'm now going to hit export. We've now got our file. We're now going to go into Substance Painter, and we're going to work in Substance Painter, and then we're going to come back out again. Now, this is the crucial bit. When you're in Substance Painter, you need to create a new file. Okay, so you're going to create a new project file. You adjust your template. If it doesn't automatically come as Blender, I think this remembers the last thing that you did. There's a lot in here, and you just need to bring it into Blender. You can select your file, so browse to your FBX file and bring that in, or OBJ file, and change the size. I tend to change it to 2K. I like working in 2K, and that's pretty much it. You don't really need to change much else in here. And then you're going to click on OK. It brings your model in, and you'll notice, right, it looks good, and you think, wow, okay, that looks amazing. Key thing is that all of your material slots have got names up here, top right hand corner in your texture list. And of course, if you want to work on all those materials, it's good that you keep an eye on the name that you're actually working on. That becomes obvious as we go along. You get kind of a slot here, a layer here that's transparent. You can delete that, it doesn't really matter. Let me show you the problem that I believe most people hit, right? Is you bring over, let's say you're going to use a smart material because they're amazing, right? So you bring over a smart material that should look like this, right? So it's kind of a brass metallic object with, painted and it's worn and all of those other things, and you think, oh yeah, I really like that one. It doesn't matter which one it is, right? You bring that over and you put that onto your mesh and see what happens, and you think, well, this is actually really quite a complicated, there's a lot in here, layers, masking, variations, all sorts of things, but your model doesn't look anything like this, right? And this is what when I first started using Substance Painter, it was an older version, before Adobe got hold of it. And this really frustrated me, and I couldn't, it just took such a long time to figure out what on earth is going on. And of course you look at here and you think, well, yeah, they're my UVs, why can't I do X, Y, and Z? It just didn't really want to work. Anyway, so let's just delete that. So this is our model. The key thing here, and I will go on about it, is you've got to bake your mesh maps. So you go over here to texture set settings and scroll down, and you bake your mesh maps first. A couple of things to look at here. You'll see all your materials. I again changed this to 2K. A couple of things down on this side I mentioned about unticking the ID and also the position. And then you can click on bake selected textures, right? And you'll see it flash through and do all of that for you. Depends on the speed of your machine, and then you can return to painting mode, right? Now you can see how your mesh maps have all been created, right? Okay, let's go back to layers again, and we've still got this one slot. You can, it can be, you can just delete it. It's not going to be used. It's transparent anyway. Now, because we've got our mesh maps baked, you can now, at this point, I would actually save the file, right? So let's just save the file. I'm just going to call it tutorial cube, let's say, right? Now what happens when we put a smart material on, put that onto our mesh, and there we go. It applies all of these layers and everything correctly, right? So this is what we want. Yeah. You can then do whatever you want. You can adjust all of this, do what you like, paint on the object, and absolutely do everything you like. So when you're happy with the file, you can, I would always just say, let's just save the file. Right, we're now ready to export out our textures, right? So what we do here now is we go File, Export Textures. Right, this bit, there's a couple of other things to remember about this. First of all, select the area that you want to save your files. So I know that I need to put it in here. Tutorial. I've got textures, right? So all my textures are going to go into their own separate file. Here, the output template is something that, now you can actually just use this one, right? But it's actually much better if you customize the one, the standard one that they've got in here. And I'll show you why in a little bit. So you select the file type. I prefer 16-bit. You don't really need to do anything else here. Now, if we go to templates at the top here, we've got output templates. Right, so this is the one that we're using, is this one here. What this doesn't include is an AO map, right? You can change all these, by the way. You can change the default files, basically you can just delete stuff and keep them all the same, and they've got base color, normal, metal, roughness, emission, alpha, displacement, right? What you can do is you can create your own slot. Okay, so what I would recommend is that you right-hand click on the original one and duplicate it. And I've already done that. I've already duplicated it, and then I've added an AO slot here, output map. Basically what you do is you just create another RGB slot like so. I'm not going to do this. Well, I'll show you how I do it. You give it the name, right? So you can sort of copy the whole name here and rename the actual what it is as AO. You then bring over from here the mesh maps, the ambient occlusion, and put it into that slot, right? And you want the gray channel, obviously. There we go. Change the file type if you need it. I mean, I made all of mine PNG, and I like to use 16 bits, and that's it. You've now created your own custom, you know, based on the original Blender output template. You've now created your own template. I'm going to delete that slot because I don't really want it. This is my slot. So if you happen to do this the first time, and then you go all the way through to export your textures, what's going to happen is the settings doesn't know that you want to use your template. It still remembers the generic, the default one. So you have to go through and select your template. So you pick up your own customized template, and I called it my standard template or my standard. We can now, that's my template. I know that that's there. We can now go to a list of exports. It's going to export this lot out, and we click export, right? Okay, that's now done. I can close that down. We now go back into Blender, right? So we're now back into Blender. We need to go to the shading of this file, and I would highly recommend that you, I think most people tend to enable the add-on Node Wrangler, because you can bring in PBR textures really quite quickly. If you don't know how to do that, you basically go to Edit Preferences, go to Add-ons, and you're actually going to look for Node Wrangler. I've enabled it, obviously, but you'll see it there. You need to just enable it. And that's you'll see now what it does if you don't know what it does already. You highlight your principal BSDF, and you press Control Shift and T. Okay, so it's already gone, and so I would say, you know, browse to where your textures are just being exported. You would highlight all of this and then click on Principal Texture. Boom, it brings it in. Now this looks good, but it's not perfect because Node Wrangler doesn't always link up most of the things. Now I've learned this kind of over the years, and watched other people doing this and kind of thought, well, that's quite interesting. The AO map, for instance, doesn't get connected to the BSDF. And also there's another slight little problem with the roughness. Okay, the diffuse roughness needs to be added in, the alpha needs to be added in. So all we need to do is add an invert node. So color invert, I'm going to dump it there for now. We need to bring the roughness from there to the color, and the color up to, oh, I do this every single time. Diffuse roughness. We need to, I don't know why they do this now. It's like collapsed by default, which is rather irritating. But anyway, you bring that up and do it there. Now, I probably haven't played around with that particular part, but if you are really, you know, if you've done an awful lot of roughness, you will start seeing a change, right? It's very subtle, and of course an awful lot of things with texturing is subtlety can make quite a large impact. We now need to add the so we've got our base color in, but the AO never got connected, right? So now we need to add a mix color node here. Okay, we need to move the base color into slot A. We need to connect up the ambient occlusion to slot B. And now we connect the output of this into the base color. And now we start seeing our ambient occlusion. Now, I've seen a couple of things, right? It doesn't look brilliant, okay, and I think it kind of all depends on your texture. I've seen a couple of times people actually moving this around the other way. You see, I don't think I don't know. It doesn't seem to be working to me, but yeah, I mean, and then of course the other thing we need to do is to change this mix from mix to multiply, right? There we go. Now, I've seen these sometimes that seems to have screwed everything up. I think it depends on your materials. Now, that's interesting because I need to add this to my instructions because this seems to make a difference. On a different material, it was actually going around the wrong way. So it almost depends on what smart material you're using, but just swap these around until you actually get what you're looking for. Now the ambient occlusion is kind of correct. I didn't change anything on that smart material, so you know you might like it a bit heavier than that. But that's basically it. Okay, so it's quite key that you change this to multiply. And now we've got our model with the material applied. This is a little bit. Let me. What if we go into preview mode? Does it look any better? I haven't set up any lighting, but you can see I've only got one light here, which is probably not bright enough. So yeah, I hope that that actually makes sense to you and helps you to get the results you want when you're using Substance Painter for all of your textures and materials. Okay, thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again in another tutorial or video. Thank you.